In 2025, nearly 1 in 7 London homeowners sold their property for less than what they originally paid, the highest loss rate of any region in England and Wales. So in this video, I am going to show you 30 London areas where you shouldn't buy a home in 2026 so you can get into a position where landlords are begging to give them advice.
Havering is the outermost London borough, sitting on the northeast edge of Greater London, bordering Essex. It contains Romford, Hornchurch, and Upminster, towns that have been sold to buyers for years as the affordable outer London option with good Elizabeth line access and the promise of more space for less money. And on paper, the maths has looked reasonable until you check the rankings. In Garrington Property Finder's 2026 Best Places to Live analysis, one of the most comprehensive annual assessments of livability across the UK, Havering ranked 1,138th out of 1,447 locations across England and Wales, second worst of any London borough. For a borough where the pitch to buyers is fundamentally about quality of life and space, ranking in the bottom 8% of every location in the country is a devastating indictment. The well-being scores are low. The natural environment scores are low, and the housing market is not doing what buyers were told it would do. Prices in Havering have struggled to hold their gains from the pandemic years. The new build flat market in Romford, where significant development has landed on the back of the Elizabeth line, is showing exactly the same symptoms as every other outer London new build story in 2026. Inventory sitting, days on market stretching, service charges eating into returns. Buyers who stretched to get in at peak pricing, discovering that the exit is not as clean as the entry was. Havering is not the worst borough on this list. It is number 10 because the gap between what buyers were promised here and what the data says they are getting is wide enough to matter before you sign. Barking and Dagenham is the most affordable London borough. Average prices around £364,000. And it recorded the steepest annual price fall of any London borough in 2024, down 7.5% in a single year. In a market where you are already buying at the bottom of the London price scale, a 7.5% fall is a significant hit on your equity before you have even finished unpacking. The crime picture is uncomfortable. In March 2025, Barking and Dagenham was London's most dangerous area for both robbery and violence and sexual offences in the same month. Robbery runs at 3.41 times the national average. Vehicle crime is running at nearly twice the national average. Theft from the person is trending upward, up 43% over a 3-year period. The borough ranked dead last in Garrington's 2026 analysis, 1,141st out of 1,447 locations across England and Wales, the single lowest ranked London borough now. Here is the nuance that this video owes you. Barking and Dagenham is not a place without a future. The Elizabeth line is real. The potential is real. Some buyers who can hold for 10 years and who are buying a house rather than a flat may look back at 2026 prices as a genuine entry point. But the buyer who is purchasing a new build flat here because the agent told them it was a great investment in an up-and-coming area, who is planning to sell in 5 years, who has not fully modeled the service charge, the leasehold terms, and what falling prices do to their equity position. That buyer is the one who calls their agent 2 years later asking what went wrong. The data was always there. Nobody showed them this video. If you are still watching this and you have not subscribed yet, I respect the commitment to being difficult, but hit that button right now. Because the 8 areas still to come on this list include a postcode where buyers were handed unexpected building safety bills of £70,000 to £95,000 per flat. A riverside zone where homes have fallen 35 to 40% from their 2022 peak and are still not moving. And a number 1 where every single pressure point on this list lands in the same postcode at the same time. Your agent is definitely not showing you number 1. Stay for it. Newham is the borough that hosted the 2012 Olympics, the borough of the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, West Ham's London Stadium, Stratford International, and the Elizabeth Line. the borough that has been described as a regeneration success story for 15 years, and it is the fourth worst borough to live in Greater London, according to Garrington's 2026 analysis, 183 places lower than it ranked just 1 year earlier, a drop of 183 places in 12 months. The crime rate in Newham is 24% higher than the London average and 37% higher than the England and Wales figure as of January 2026. Theft from the person runs at 6.12 times the national average, 6 times. Robbery rates are 3.65 times the national average. Vehicle crime is 2.35 times. And then there is the flood risk. Newham is built on former marshland. More than 85% of London's marshland was lost during the 20th century, when areas like Newham were urbanized. The natural drainage buffer is gone. The 2021 flash floods hit Newham among the hardest of any London borough. Surface water flooding, the kind the Thames Barrier cannot stop, is one of the greatest documented threats to East London. Insurance premiums in flood risk postcodes are rising. Some properties in Newham's lower-lying zones are already seeing flood risk factored into their valuations. New build flats in Newham account for 1 in 10 of all property sales in the borough, the highest proportion anywhere in London. In 2025, more than 1 in 5 sellers in Tower Hamlets and Newham completed at a loss. The regeneration story is real. But the regeneration story does not protect you from a crime rate 6 times the national average, a flood map that is working against you, and a resale market where investors are cutting prices to exit. Croydon is a South London borough of about 400,000 people, 10 miles from the city centre, with direct rail to London Bridge in 15 minutes. And for years, it was sold as the obvious choice for buyers who wanted Zone 4 prices with Zone 2 access. A large town with a functioning high street, a theatre, and a growing restaurant scene. And then the council went bankrupt. In 2020, Croydon Council issued a Section 114 notice, effectively a declaration that it could not meet its financial obligations. It was the largest Section 114 notice in UK local government history. The council has been rebuilding its finances ever since. Council tax in Croydon has risen sharply. Services have been cut. The reputational damage to the borough has been real, and it has been lasting. Crime in Croydon runs at 132.7 crimes per 1,000 residents, one of the highest rates of any London borough, higher than Hackney, higher than Lambeth, and significantly above the London average. Violent crime, knife offences, and drug-related incidents have all been trending upward, and the housing market reflects all of it. Croydon recorded a 3.8% annual price fall in 2024 on top of years of underperformance. The new build flat market has corrected harder still. Former buy-to-let properties are flooding the sales market as landlords exit following the Renters' Rights Act, creating a supply overhang that is keeping prices soft. A buyer purchasing a Croydon flat in 2026 is buying into a market with a bankrupt council history, above-average crime, falling prices, and a supply overhang of investor exits. The 15-minute train to London Bridge is genuinely useful. It does not fix any of the above. Hackney is one of the most culturally celebrated boroughs in London. Shoreditch, Dalston, London Fields, Broadway Market. The borough that turned from post-industrial neglect into one of London's most talked-about destinations. And for a decade, buying in Hackney was one of the smartest calls a London property buyer could make. But Hackney in 2026 is a more complicated story than the hype suggests. The crime rate in Hackney is 116.4 crimes per 1,000 residents, one of the highest of any London borough. Theft runs at 11,406 incidents per year. Violent crime records 8,002 incidents, and the borough sits on former marshland, putting it firmly in the surface water flood risk zone, alongside its neighbors Tower Hamlets and Newham. The Environment Agency and UCL Research both identify Hackney as carrying significant surface water flood exposure. But the biggest issue for a Hackney buyer in 2026 is not the crime rate or the flood map. It is the price. Hackney house prices rose 2.2% in the year to January 2026, at a time when London overall fell 1.7%. That sounds positive. What it actually means is that Hackney has not corrected in the way that other inner East London boroughs have. You are still paying near-peak prices in a borough with a 116 crime rate, significant flood exposure, and a leasehold flat market that nationally is seeing 1 in 5 sellers complete at a loss. You are paying for the story. The story is not cheap enough to absorb the risk underneath it. Tower Hamlets sits at the intersection of almost every problem this list covers: falling prices, crime, flood risk, building safety crisis, leasehold traps. And it is not a borough where these problems are peripheral. They are central. They are in the data. The average house price in Tower Hamlets fell 9.5% in the 12 months to January 2026, nearly 6 times faster than the London average. The borough with more new build homes than anywhere else in the capital is the borough that is falling fastest. That is not a coincidence. It is the consequence of building at prices that the market has now rejected. The building safety crisis in Tower Hamlets is worse than anywhere else in London. The borough issued what it described as the UK's first ever remediation order against a developer, which tells you everything about the scale of the problem they are dealing with. Leaseholders in Tower Hamlets tower blocks were initially quoted £70,000 to £95,000 per flat for structural remediation work. A Court of Appeal judgment in December 2025 ruled the council could not pass those costs to leaseholders, which is good news for those specific leaseholders. But it reveals how severe the building safety issues in this borough's stock genuinely are. Tower Hamlets, Newham, and Hackney are all built on former marshland. More than 85% of London's marshland was lost during urbanization. The surface water flood risk in Tower Hamlets is significant and documented. The 2021 flash floods hit hard here. Climate projections say the risk is rising, not falling. If you are buying a new build flat in Tower Hamlets in 2026, you are buying the borough's most common property type in its worst performing market, with unresolved building safety questions, surface water flood exposure, and a crime rate that sits among the highest in East London. The view of the Canary Wharf skyline from your window is real, so is all of the above. Lambeth is an inner South London borough running from Waterloo and Vauxhall down through Brixton and Streatham. It includes some of the most culturally vibrant streets in the capital. Brixton Market, the Ritzy Cinema, the Electric Avenue, a music and arts scene that has been a defining part of London's identity for decades. It is also the borough with the highest recorded crime rate in London. 132 crimes per 1,000 residents. 8 homicides were recorded in the borough in 2025 alone. Theft recorded 13,709 offenses. Violent crime logged 9,454 incidents. These are not figures that soften when you get to the nicer streets. They are borough-wide figures that apply to the postcode you are buying into. The housing market in Lambeth is under pressure from multiple directions. The north of the borough, 9 Elms, Vauxhall, has seen some of the sharpest new build flat price falls in London. Riverside towers that sold for £900,000 at peak are transacting significantly lower. The south of the borough, Streatham, Tulse Hill, has been more stable but is carrying the overhang of landlord exits as buy-to-let investors respond to the Renters' Rights Act. Buyers who are drawn to Lambeth for its culture and its central location are making a reasonable call about the character of the place. But they are buying into a borough where the crime rate is the highest in London, where the flat market has corrected hard in the north and is under pressure in the south, and where the combination of those two things is not fully reflected in what agents are telling them when they show the property. Westminster is the borough that was supposed to never go down, the most famous address in the world, Zone 1. Parliament, Buckingham Palace, Hyde Park, the postcode that every international buyer wanted and that domestic buyers aspired to. And it recorded the largest annual price fall of any London borough in the 12 months to December 2025, down 14.8%. 14.8% in a single year. In Westminster, the average home in Westminster fell from close to £1 million to £872,000 in 12 months. That is an official fall of £127,000. In the flat market, which dominates in Bayswater, Paddington, and Maida Vale, the numbers are worse. Properties that went to market at £1.1 million in 2022 are completing today at £750,000 when the seller genuinely needs to move. That is a fall of more than 30% from peak in specific properties and specific postcodes. The mechanism is structural, and it is not reversing quickly. International buyers, who were the demand backstop for Westminster property at any price for 2 decades, have stepped back following stamp duty surcharges for overseas purchasers and the 2025 non-dom tax regime changes. When that buyer leaves, the domestic buyer cannot bridge the gap at the prices the market had established. The price has to fall until a domestic buyer can reach it, and it is still falling. A buyer who purchases a Westminster leasehold flat in 2026 is buying into a falling market. A leasehold system still in the middle of reform, service charges that have risen 41% across London since 2019, and a resale pool that is smaller and less wealthy than the one that set the prices they are paying. Westminster is not a permanent avoid, but right now, paying anything close to asking price in Bayswater or Paddington requires a conviction that the market has found its floor. The data does not yet say that it has. 9 Elms is the most visible symbol of what can go wrong when you build 20,000 homes for an international investor buyer pool, and that buyer pool stops showing up. The 227-hectare regeneration zone between Vauxhall and Battersea Power Station was approved and built on one fundamental assumption: that London prime property would keep rising, that overseas buyers from Asia and the Middle East would keep coming, and that the proximity premium of a Zone 1 South Bank address would justify prices of £1,200 to £1,500 per square foot. All 3 of those assumptions broke simultaneously. The average sold price for flats in 9 Elms has been falling. Properties that sold for £1.1 million at peak are completing today at £700,000 to £750,000 when the seller needs to exit. That is a 30 to 35% correction from peak, and the sellers who need to exit are finding that the queue of buyers at even those reduced prices is shorter than they expected. The flood risk here is real and documented. 9 Elms sits on the south bank of the Thames, and multiple properties in the zone carry Environment Agency flood risk designations. Insurance premiums for riverside properties have been rising. Insurers paid out a record £6.1 billion in property damage claims across 2025. Domestic flood claims alone rose 38%, and the pricing of that risk is starting to filter into what mortgage lenders and insurers are prepared to do in flood-adjacent postcodes. Service charges in 9 Elms run high. Some developments charge £600 to £800 per month in management fees on top of mortgage payments. The building safety certification process is unresolved in some towers. The Northern Line is excellent. The Battersea Power Station retail development is genuinely impressive. But a buyer spending £700,000 on a flat in 9 Elms in 2026 is buying into a market that fell 30% from peak, a flood risk zone, a service charge structure that costs £8,000 a year before they have paid the council tax, and a resale pool that is the smallest it has been since the development pipeline opened. Is the Isle of Dogs and Canary Wharf, the E14 postcode, the towers that define London's skyline from every direction, and the single area in London where every problem on this list converges into one concentrated, documented, data-backed warning. Let's go through it systematically. Prices. Tower hamlets fell 9.5% in the 12 months to January 2026. In the Isle of Dogs specifically, flats that sold at £700,000 at the 2022 peak are being listed at £480,000 to £500,000. Some have been reduced multiple times and are still not exchanging. The cumulative fall from peak in some buildings is 30 to 35%, and the developer stock and investor resale stock are competing with each other in the same postcode for the same buyer at similar prices. Both are sitting. Building safety. Tower Hamlets has the most unresolved cladding and building safety issues of any London borough. The borough issued the UK's first ever council remediation order. Leaseholders in 2 tower blocks were quoted £70,000 to £95,000 each for structural safety work before a court ruled the council could not charge them. The Building Safety Act has created a direct split between buildings with certified remediation, which can be mortgaged, and those without, which effectively cannot. In some Isle of Dogs towers, unresolved EWS1 status means the only buyers are cash buyers. Cash buyers negotiate down, and they negotiate hard. Flood risk. Tower hamlets and the Isle of Dogs are built on former marshland. The Environment Agency classifies significant parts of the E14 postcode as at risk of river and surface water flooding. The Thames Barrier protects against tidal surges. It does not protect against the surface water flooding that hit East London in 2021, and that climate projections say will intensify. Flood insurance for riverside and low-lying properties in tower hamlets is getting more expensive and in some cases harder to obtain. Crime. Tower Hamlets runs a crime rate of approximately 29 violent offenses per 1,000 people. Theft and antisocial behavior are concentrated around the major transport hubs at Canary Wharf, Whitechapel, and Poplar. The borough is in East London, which as a whole tops the city for crime. Service charges. The towers of the Isle of Dogs, with their concierges, gyms, residence lounges, and sophisticated building management systems, carry service charges that in many cases run to £400, £500, £600 a month or more. Service charges across London have risen 41% between 2019 and 2024. They are not going down. A buyer who purchases a Canary Wharf flat at £500,000 pays £500 a month in service charges and needs to sell in 5 years is doing maths that does not easily work in their favor. And the commute premium. The entire pricing structure of Canary Wharf residential property was built on the assumption that living close to a financial district desk was worth a significant premium. Hybrid working has permanently reduced that assumption. The buyer who was paying £700,000 for proximity to an office they now attend twice a week is not the buyer they were in 2019. That buyer has not come back. The prices that were built for them are still here. The sellers are still here. And the agents calling sellers to say it is time to reduce again are calling from Isle of Dogs postcodes every single week. Hammersmith and Fulham is a West London borough sitting between Kensington and Chiswick. Good tube connections, Victorian housing stock, the kind of address that was supposed to be recession-proof because of where it sits on the London map. The average house price in Hammersmith and Fulham was £728,000 in February 2026, down 7.5% from a year earlier. That is official ONS data from the UK House Price Index. In a borough where the average home costs £728,000, that is a fall of roughly £59,000 in a single year. Break it down by property type and the picture sharpens. Flats in Hammersmith and Fulham fell 8.6% in the same period. And for new build flats, analysis by Hamptons found that 2/3 of all new build flat owners who sold in this borough in 2025 sold at a loss. 2/3. What does that mean for a buyer? It means sellers are motivated. The negotiating dynamic has completely reversed from 2021 and 2022. A seller who bought a new build flat at peak pricing and needs to move is not holding out for full asking price. They are accepting realistic offers from buyers who have done their homework. The Victorian terraced houses and garden flats are holding up better. The freehold, the school catchment, the garden, those qualities still command full price. But in the flat market, the correction is real and documented. A patient buyer, a good solicitor, and an offer below asking is a combination that is moving properties in Hammersmith and Fulham right now. Newham is an East London borough of about 380,000 people, sitting just east of the city, anchored by Stratford and the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, the borough that hosted the Olympics, the borough that was supposed to be transformed by regeneration, transport, and investment. And in one very specific sense, Newham has been transformed. It now has the highest proportion of new build properties of any London borough. 1 in every 10 property sales in Newham is a new build. That is remarkable. It also explains exactly what is happening to prices here. New build flats that were going to market at £500,000 to £650,000 during 2022 are now being listed and sold at significantly lower levels. Investors who bought off-plan during the pandemic and tried to sell on completion are discovering that the secondary market buyer does not exist at those prices. The competition between developer stock and investor resales in the same postcode for the same buyer has created a negotiating environment that is genuinely favorable to the patient buyer willing to look carefully. According to Hampton's analysis, more than 1 in 5 sellers in Tower Hamlets and Newham completed their sale in 2025 at a loss. That is land registry data, and it tells you exactly what leverage a buyer has in this market right now. The Olympic Park is real. The transport connections at Stratford are among the best in London. The long-term trajectory of East London is not in question. But right now, in 2026, you can negotiate on properties in Newham in a way that was impossible 2 years ago. That is the window. And windows in the London property market do not stay open forever. If you are still watching this, and you have not subscribed yet, I respect the commitment to being difficult. I genuinely do. But hit the button right now, because the 8 areas still to come on this list include a borough where the average home fell £127,000 in a single year, a postcode where sellers are handing buyers £80,000 off the asking price just to close the deal, and a number 1 that has not offered this kind of entry point since the financial crisis. You came this far. Stay for the part that actually matters. Camden is an inner North London borough, sitting about 2 miles north of the city, home to Hampstead, Kentish Town, Primrose Hill, and one of the most distinctive high streets in London. Camden is not the kind of borough that ends up on a list like this. And yet here it is. The official UK House Price Index for December 2025 showed Camden down 11.1% year-on-year, 11% in Camden, where Primrose Hill houses overlook the whole of central London and the streets around Hampstead Heath have not been affordable to ordinary buyers in 2 decades. The fall is concentrated in the flat market and in the parts of the borough further from the Heath. The streets of NW1 around Camden Town and Kentish Town, where the buyer base is younger, more mortgage-dependent, and more sensitive to rate movements, have seen prices adjust materially. A 2-bedroom flat in NW1 that was priced at £650,000 in 2022 is now being listed in the high £500,000 and negotiating down from there. For buyers who have always wanted Camden but could never quite reach it, this is your data point. An 11% fall on a £650,000 flat is £71,500. That is real money. That is the gap between what Camden cost 2 years ago and what it costs today in official land registry figures. The borough is not going to stop being Camden. The restaurants, the market, the park, the community, none of that has changed. The price has. And right now, the price is lower than it has been in years. Tower Hamlets is the inner East London borough running from Whitechapel down through Canary Wharf and the Isle of Dogs. It has the highest concentration of new build residential development of any London borough. 7.2% of all housing was built in the last 5 years. And in January 2026, the official ONS figure showed Tower Hamlets down 9.5% year-on-year. That is nearly 6 times faster than the London average. The average house price in Tower Hamlets was £464,000 in January 2026. A year earlier, it was £512,000. That is a fall of £48,000 in 12 months on official data. For first-time buyers, the average purchase price fell from £492,000 to £444,000 over the same period. Those are not small numbers. Those are life-changing numbers for a buyer who has been saving for years trying to reach this market. The reasons the correction happened here are well documented. Remote work destroyed the Canary Wharf commute premium that the new build towers were priced on. building safety issues affected the mortgageability of some buildings. Service charges on the larger developments climbed to levels that made the overall cost of ownership difficult to justify at peak prices. But for a buyer who has done their due diligence on building safety, who has checked the EWS1 fire safety certificate, who has confirmed the building has clean cladding certification, who has verified the service charge is manageable, Tower Hamlets in 2026 offers entry prices that have not been available since the Crossrail announcement first started moving this market. A patient buyer with a good broker and an independent solicitor is in a very strong position here. The City of London is a square mile of financial infrastructure in the heart of the capital. Around 9,000 residents, millions of daily workers, and a residential property market that has fallen harder and faster than almost anywhere else in the country. Official data shows the City of London down 11.2% year-on-year to February 2026. That is on top of falls in previous years. From the 2022 peak, the cumulative fall in the city's residential market is approaching 30 to 35% in many segments. A flat that sold for £900,000 at the top of the market is listing today at £600,000 to £650,000. The reason is one that is not going to change quickly. Remote and hybrid work has permanently reduced the value of proximity to a city desk. The buyer who was paying a premium to live inside walking distance of their office is now working from that office 2 or 3 days a week and is no longer willing to pay that premium. They have moved to Lewisham or Walthamstow, and they are not coming back. But here is what that means for the right buyer. Someone who wants Zone 1 London at prices that have not been available in Zone 1 for 15 years. Someone who values the architecture, the history, the transport connections. The city has more tube lines running through it than almost anywhere in London, without needing to be there for work. A buyer who does not need the proximity premium because they are not paying for proximity to a job. They are paying for a place to live. And right now, that place to live is available at a 30% discount to where it was 2 years ago. Kensington and Chelsea is the most expensive borough in the country, the Royal Borough, and it is down 11.5% in the 12 months to December 2025, according to the official UK House Price Index. The average home in the borough now costs £1.2 million, down from significantly higher at the peak. That number still sounds expensive. It is expensive, but context matters. In a borough where prices fell £155,000 in a single year, the official ONS figure, the buyers who do have the means to operate at this level are operating in a market where sellers are accepting discounts that would have been inconceivable in 2021. Data from Coutts shows that 45% of all listings in prime London underwent a published price reduction in the most recently measured quarter. 45%. That means nearly half of everything listed in Kensington and Chelsea had its asking price cut before it sold. The average discount achieved by sellers was 10.3% below asking. In a borough where the average home costs £1.2 million, a 10.3% discount is £123,600 off the asking price. The buyers for Kensington and Chelsea are not first-time buyers. They are people who have capital, who have been watching this market for years, and who understand that 2026 is the first time in a decade that this borough has offered meaningful negotiating room. Experienced buyers with experienced advisors are taking advantage of that room right now. Westminster is down 14.8% in the 12 months to December 2025, according to the UK House Price Index. It is the largest annual fall of any London borough in that period. The average home in Westminster is now £872,000, down from close to £1 million 12 months ago, a fall of £127,000 in a year in Westminster. The areas within Westminster that have corrected hardest are the flat-heavy postcodes, Bayswater, Paddington, Maida Vale. These are areas where the buyer pool depended heavily on international purchasers, who are now facing a 2% additional stamp duty surcharge as non-UK residents, on top of standard rates. When that buyer steps back, the domestic buyer cannot bridge the gap, and the price adjusts until someone can. A 2-bedroom flat in Paddington that was listed at £1.1 million in 2022 is now completing in the high £700,000 when motivated sellers need to move. That is a correction of more than £300,000 from peak on a specific property type in a specific postcode for a buyer who knows where to look and is prepared to negotiate seriously. The Westminster postcode, the W2 address, the Zone 1 tube access, and the Hyde Park on the doorstep. None of that has changed. The price of accessing all of it has fallen by amounts that will not be available again for a very long time. Croydon is a South London borough of about 400,000 people, about 10 miles from the city centre, with direct rail to London Bridge in 15 minutes and Victoria in 20. And Croydon recorded a 3.8% annual price fall in 2024, on top of a market that was already underperforming. The flat market has corrected further still. Former rental properties, landlords exiting the market following the Renters' Rights Act 2025, are flooding the sales market, and some listings are priced 5 to 10% below what comparable properties were achieving a year ago just to move quickly. Croydon carries the weight of its council's Section 114 notice, effectively a bankruptcy declaration, in 2020. That reputational damage has been real, and it has shaped how out-of-area buyers perceive the borough ever since. But reputational damage creates a pricing discount, and a pricing discount in a borough with genuine transport connectivity is an opportunity for the buyer who is willing to look past the headline. The High Street is being actively regenerated. The Churchill Theatre, the covered market, the rail connections, these are not going away. And the buyer who purchases a Croydon property at today's corrected prices with a 15-minute train to London Bridge is buying a location that is a genuine bargain relative to any comparable commute time from a different direction. Barking and Dagenham is the most affordable London borough, sitting on the outer eastern edge of the capital. The Elizabeth Line, Crossrail, runs through it. The average house price in the borough as of February 2026 is £364,000, the lowest of any London borough. And the borough recorded the steepest annual price fall of any London authority in 2024, down 7.5% in a single year. Those two facts together, lowest price and sharpest fall, create a specific opportunity for a specific buyer, someone who wants London, who wants the Elizabeth Line connection that puts the city and the West End within 25 minutes, who wants a 3-bedroom house with a garden, not a 1-bedroom flat in a tower, and who has a budget that rules out the rest of the map. In Barking and Dagenham, £364,000 does not buy you a flat, it buys you a house. Proper house with a garden and a garage on a residential street. The same money in Zone 2 or Zone 3 buys you a leasehold flat with a service charge. In Barking and Dagenham, it buys you something a family can actually live in. The fall in prices here is real and it is documented. But the fundamentals, the Elizabeth Line, the proximity to central London, the housing stock, have not changed. The price has adjusted. That adjustment is what turns a market from an aspiration into a purchase for a buyer who has been saving for years and watching prices from the outside. Number 1 is Westminster. Not because it has the largest percentage fall, though at 14.8% year-on-year, it has the largest of any borough in the December 2025 UK House Price Index. And not because it has the most distressed sellers, though it has many of those too. Westminster is number 1 because it represents something that has not been available in the London property market for a generation. A genuine, documented, measurable opportunity to buy into one of the most prestigious addresses in the world at prices that are significantly below where they were and are unlikely to stay at these levels permanently. Here is the specific data. The average home in Westminster fell from close to £1 million to £872,000 in the 12 months to December 2025. That is an official fall of £127,000 in a year. In the flat market, where most Westminster transactions happen, the falls are sharper. Properties in Bayswater and Paddington that sold for £1.1 million to £1.3 million in 2022 are now completing at £750,000 to £850,000 when the seller needs to move. That is a correction of 30 to 35% from peak in Westminster. The mechanism driving this is known, and it is structural. International buyers, the non-UK residents who were the demand backstop for Westminster property at any price for 20 years, have stepped back. The 2% additional stamp duty surcharge for overseas buyers, on top of standard rates that on a £1 million property already run past £40,000, has made the purchase cost prohibitive for a buyer whose primary calculation is return on investment. And the non-dom tax regime changes of 2025 have reduced the tax efficiency of using London as a primary base for international wealth management. When that international buyer steps back, the domestic buyer who could never compete at those prices is suddenly in the room, and the domestic buyer has a mortgage, and the mortgage buyer negotiates, and the seller who needs to complete accepts the negotiated price. 30% of listings in prime Westminster areas came with price reductions in the most recently measured period. The average discount achieved was 10% below the already reduced asking price. In a market where properties are listed at £800,000, a 10% discount is £80,000 in the buyer's pocket on completion. Westminster, Mayfair, Bayswater, Paddington, the W1 and W2 postcodes, Hyde Park on the doorstep, Zone 1 tube access in every direction, some of the finest Georgian architecture in London, and a market that is, right now in 2026, offering the most patient and best prepared buyers a discount to entry that will not be available here again for a very long time. Walthamstow is a town in the London borough of Waltham Forest, sitting about 7 miles northeast of central London on the Victoria Line. And Walthamstow is the outer East London story that the numbers have been telling for a decade, while most people outside the borough were not listening. The average house price in Waltham Forest was £528,000 in November 2025, up 4% from the year before, at a time when the wider London average actually fell 1.2%. That is not a small divergence. When the whole of London is going backwards and one borough is going forward by 4%, something structural is happening. And the long run tells an even more dramatic story. Property prices in Walthamstow have risen 652% since the year 2000. 652%. The average London rise over the same period was 357%. Walthamstow nearly doubled the London average over 25 years. That gap is not an accident. It is the story of a borough that was affordable, became desirable, and has been running ever further from its original character ever since. What drove this is the same force driving change across the whole of East London. Walthamstow was affordable. It had the Victoria Line, direct to the West End in 20 minutes, and prices that felt like a different city from Islington or Hackney. Artists moved in first, then young professionals, then the coffee shops and the restaurants followed, and then the people who made it affordable in the first place could no longer afford it. The Walthamstow Village Conservation Area, the medieval street pattern around St. Mary's Church, is one of the most desirable addresses in East London now. One-bedroom flats near the tube station are selling above £400,000. Terraced houses on the better streets are reaching £700,000 and above. A house that sold for £80,000 in 1995 is listed at £650,000 today. The same house, the same street, a completely different city around it. The people who were here first are the ones doing the maths on the way out. Peckham is a neighbourhood in the London borough of Southwark in southeast London, about 3 miles from London Bridge, and Peckham is the South London story that still surprises people who have not been paying attention, because the transformation here has happened faster than almost any comparable area in the capital. 4 separate Peckham wards rank inside the top 53 most rapidly changing neighbourhoods in the whole of London. Peckham North at 20th, Peckham North West at 22nd, Burgess Park at 26th, Peckham Park Road at 36th. 4 wards in one neighborhood, and Southwark has seen a 32% drop in primary school applications over the last decade, one of the clearest signals that the families who used to define these communities can no longer afford to stay. The physical transformation is visible to anyone who has been coming to Peckham for more than 10 years. The Bussey Building, Frank's Cafe on the roof of a multi-story car park, bold tendencies, Peckham levels, the restaurants along Bellenden Road, the natural wine bars, the independent record shops. The creative class arrived, built something interesting, and the property market followed them in. It always does. That is the pattern. And by the time the property market follows, the original community is already somewhere else. Prices in Peckham have risen steadily over the last 5 years, and the starting point was already significantly higher than it was a decade ago. The trajectory has not reversed. The people being priced out are the families that have been here for 2 and 3 generations. The displacement is not invisible. The number of children in Southwark schools has been falling for years. The community that made Peckham what it is the one that can no longer afford to live in what it became. If you are still watching this and you have not subscribed yet, I genuinely respect the commitment to being difficult, but hit that button right now, because the 8 areas still to come on this list include the single fastest changing neighborhood in the entire city of London, where home values have risen 250% in a decade, where incomes shifted 45% in 8 years, and where a community that existed for half a century has been almost entirely replaced. You came this far. The top 8 are the ones that explain what is actually happening to this city. Stay for them. Camberwell is a neighborhood in the London borough of Southwark, sitting between Peckham and Brixton in South London. And Camberwell Green Ward is the 6th most gentrified neighborhood in the entire city, 6th out of hundreds of London neighborhoods. In a borough where 5 wards made the top 53 most rapidly changing areas in the capital. The income shift in Camberwell Green has been dramatic. It is one of the areas with the most significant rise in average resident income over the last decade, in a borough that already had some of the starkest inequality in inner London. The proportion of social rented housing across the most rapidly changing London areas has fallen 5% on average, significantly faster than the 1% fall across the rest of the capital. In Camberwell, where council housing once defined the neighborhood, that change is visible in the physical fabric of the streets. The Georgian squares around Camberwell Grove, some of the finest Georgian architecture in South London, have been attracting buyers who 20 years ago would have been in Clapham or Brixton. The Denmark Hill overground connection and the cycling distance to the city have made Camberwell legible to the professional class in a way it simply was not 15 years ago. And with that legibility came the prices. And with the prices came the displacement. Loughborough Road, the ward that stretches from Cold Harbour Lane toward Brixton, sits inside the top 20 most rapidly changing neighborhoods in the whole of London. What is notable about Camberwell is the breadth of the change. It is not one street or one development. It is an entire neighborhood ratcheting upward, ward by ward, from both ends at once. The change is not slowing down, it is accelerating. Woodbury Down is a neighborhood in the London borough of Hackney, sitting around Manor House Tube Station on the Piccadilly line. And Woodbury Down is one of the most dramatic single-site examples of engineered change in the entire capital. Because unlike the organic transformation happening in Peckham or Walthamstow, what is happening here is deliberate, planned, and proceeding on a timeline set by a developer rather than a community. The Woodbury Down estate is undergoing one of Europe's biggest single-site regeneration projects. Over 2,000 homes have already been demolished and replaced. When the project completes in 2040, 5,500 homes will stand where 2,000 once did. But there will be 275 fewer social rented homes on the completed site than existed in 1999. The estate is getting bigger. The affordable housing is getting smaller. Those two things are happening simultaneously, and the maths is not complicated. The area shows a 22% rise in average resident income over 8 years, placing it 4th on the list of the most rapidly changing London neighborhoods. Private rents moved in lockstep. A 1-bedroom flat in 2021 rented for £1,546 a month. By 2024, the same flat was £2,600. That is a 68% rent increase in 3 years. In Hackney, where rents are already among the highest of any London borough, that number means entire communities being priced out of a neighborhood, being rebuilt without room for them. Hackney house prices rose 2.2% in early 2026, at a time when London overall fell 1.7%. For buyers, that signals consistent demand. For the residents who were here before the regeneration came, it signals something else entirely. Bruce Grove North is a ward in the London borough of Haringey in North London, sitting in the Tottenham area around the Bruce Grove Overground Station, and it is 5th on the ranking of the most rapidly gentrifying London neighborhoods, with a 21% rise in average resident income over 8 years. That puts it ahead of some of the more famous names on this list. Tottenham has been on the edge of this story for years. The narrative has always been next. The Spurs Stadium is built. The High Road West regeneration is planned. The overground links to Liverpool Street and Stratford have always been there. And yet the price of a home in N17 and N15 remained among the lowest in inner North London for a long time, stubbornly resisting the trajectory that had already consumed Hackney, Stoke Newington, and Finsbury Park, just to the south. That resistance is ending. The combination of planned regeneration, transport connectivity, and prices that still look cheap relative to areas immediately south and west are pulling in buyers and investors who have been priced out of those areas. The coffee shops and independent restaurants that always arrive a few years ahead of the sharp price rises are arriving in Tottenham now. That is not speculation. It is the pattern that has played out in every area on this list, and it is replicating itself in Bruce Grove right now. The people already living in Bruce Grove North are watching it happen. Some own their homes and will benefit when they sell. Most rent and will not benefit at all, because when prices go up in Tottenham, rents go up in Tottenham, and the tenant moves further out. The window between now and when this area gets fully priced out is narrowing every single month. Finsbury Park sits on the border between Islington, Hackney, and Haringey, anchored by one of the best connected transport hubs in North London. The Victoria Line, the Piccadilly Line, and National Rail all stopping at the same station. And Finsbury Park West is firmly inside the list of the most rapidly changing London neighborhoods. It did not get there slowly, and it did not get there quietly. A decade ago, the streets around the station were the cheaper alternative to Highbury and Arsenal. Today, they are the expensive part of N4 and N7, the restaurants on Stroud Green Road, the independent shops, the conversion of Victorian terraces into high-specification family homes. The physical change happened quickly, and the prices followed within a few years, exactly as they always do. The income shift is visible in who is moving in and who is moving out. The proportion of social rented households in rapidly gentrifying areas has fallen 5%, significantly faster than the London average. In Finsbury Park, that means people who have lived here for decades being replaced by people arriving for the first time from wealthier backgrounds, pulling the average income of the neighborhood upward in a way that has no precedent in the area's recent history. Bethnal Green South is a ward in the London borough of Tower Hamlets in East London, sitting between Bethnal Green Tube Station and the Whitechapel Road. It is 3rd on the ranking of the most rapidly gentrifying London neighborhoods, with a 27% rise in average resident income over 8 years. 27% in 8 years, while the rest of London averaged 1% after inflation. That gap tells you everything about how fast the ground has shifted here and how completely the character of the neighborhood has been remade in less than a decade. The physical transformation in Bethnal Green South has been running for over a decade. The Victorian railway arches that were once warehouses and light industrial units are now restaurants, cocktail bars, and artisan workshops. The Columbia Road Flower Market on Sunday mornings pulls crowds from across London. The streets between Bethnal Green Road and Roman Road, the market that has been operating since the 1880s, have been shifting from their working-class character towards something different and more expensive. The working class is still there, but the ratio is changing fast, and the direction of travel is one way. Tower Hamlets as a whole contains 12 of the most rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods in London, the highest count of any borough. The Bangladeshi community that settled here in large numbers from the 1970s onward is seeing an eastward shift, moving into Newham as rising rents in Tower Hamlets make the borough their parents called home simply unaffordable for the next generation. That is visible in the school roll data, in the census records, and in the community organizations that have been tracking it for years. The change in Bethnal Green South is real, it is documented, and it is not finished. Aldgate is a neighborhood on the border of the City of London and Tower Hamlets, around Aldgate East Tube Station. It is second on the ranking of the most rapidly changing London areas. Resident incomes rose 29% over 8 years, while the rest of London averaged 1%. That is a gap of 28 percentage points in less than a decade. The mechanism is straightforward. The City of London expanded eastward. Tech companies moved into Shoreditch and along the Spitalfields border. The demand for housing within walking distance of EC2 and E1 workplaces pulled prices in Aldgate to levels that had no precedent in the neighborhood's history. Streets that were predominantly Bangladeshi British working-class communities in the early 2000s now carry average flat prices above £500,000. A flat that changed hands for £120,000 in 2002 is listed at £550,000 today. The street is the same. Everything else is different. Over 33,000 homes in Tower Hamlets are managed by private landlords, the highest count in London. When a landlord buys into an area and lets the property to a higher income tenant, they perform a form of quiet, legal, market-driven displacement. One transaction at a time. One lease renewal at a time. No single decision created the Aldgate that exists today. The accumulation of thousands of individual decisions did. And the community that defined this neighborhood for half a century is now on its edges, watching the prices from the outside. Spitalfields sits at the very top of the ranking of the most rapidly gentrifying London neighborhoods. Resident incomes rose 45% over 8 years, while the rest of London averaged 1%. But Spitalfields is number 2 on this list, not number 1, because the Spitalfields story is the completed version of something still in process in the area that comes next. It has already changed. What it looks like after the change is done is the most important thing to understand about this entire countdown. Spitalfields was a Huguenot silk weaving community in the 1700s, a Jewish immigrant quarter in the late 1800s, a Bangladeshi British community from the 1970s onward. Each wave shaped the place. Each wave was eventually displaced by the next. The Georgian merchants' houses on Fournier Street, priced between £20,000 and £50,000 in the early 1980s, sell today for between £3 million and £6 million. What was a low-income residential community is now primarily a food and leisure destination for the professional class, with residential prices to match. The community that shaped Spitalfields for 50 years was displaced not by violence and not by a single decision, but by the accumulation of market transactions that together produced a transformation nobody voted for and nobody designed. The process is complete here. The community is gone. The prices are permanent. What happens next in the number 1 area on this list is the same story. Just earlier in the timeline, the ending has already been written. It is sitting one stop east on the district line. 1. Bromley by Bow West, Tower Hamlets. Number 1 on this list is Bromley by Bow West, a ward on the eastern edge of Tower Hamlets, sitting along the River Lea between Bow and the Olympic Park. And it is number 1 not because of where it currently is, but because of the speed at which it is changing, the forces driving that change, and the near certainty of where it is heading. Researchers studying 25 years of London population data specifically identified Bromley by Bow West as a case study in rapid, deliberate, redevelopment-driven change. Some areas, they concluded, have seen rapid changes from around 2012 onwards, suggesting deliberate redevelopment-driven transformation. Bromley by Bow West was named directly, not as an example, as the example. House prices across the most rapidly gentrifying London neighborhoods rose 250% between 2010 and 2023, compared to 200% for the rest of London. That additional 50 percentage point gap, compounded over a decade, translates into enormous sums and enormous transfers of wealth out of the hands of people who rent into the hands of people who own. What makes Bromley by Bow West #1 in 2026 is its position on the map. It sits between three of the most active regeneration zones in London simultaneously. To the northwest, the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park and Stratford International. To the south, Canary Wharf and the towers of the Isle of Dogs. To the east, Barking Riverside and the Thames Corridor. Bromley by Bow West is the gap between those zones that has not yet been fully consumed by any of them. But the gap is closing from all three directions at once. The Bow Creek and River Lee waterway runs through it. Planning permissions are in process. Developers are looking at the land. Land prices are already moving ahead of the residential prices, which is always the first sign. Areas in the early stages of deliberate redevelopment-driven change consistently see residential inflows at twice the London neighborhood average. Bromley by Bow West is at the beginning of that curve, not the end of it. The families living here now are in the same position. The communities of Spitalfields, Aldgate, Bethnal Green South, and Woodbury Down were in before the wave came through. The question is not whether the change is coming. The planning permissions, the developer interest, the land price movements, and the regeneration zones closing in from three sides all say it is. The question is what happens to the people already there when it arrives. That is the most important question in London's housing market right now. Not where prices are going, not where to buy, but who gets to stay.